presents award-winning St. Louis author Mary Troy with her new book, In the Sky Lord, a new collection of short stories set in the beating heart of the Midwest. Mary's in conversation tonight with John Dalton, an author as well, and the director of UMSL's MFA Program. So we're very excited to have you both with us tonight. Some notes before we begin. This event is only possible because of your support. So when you shop at Left Bank Books, your money goes directly into our local economy. So it helps keep our parks beautiful and our streets paved and everything else that makes St. Louis great. So thank you so much for shopping local and supporting this event tonight. I also want to give a brief shout out to everybody who's been helping us the last week or so. We've started a winter campaign for the Left Bank Books Foundation, which is the nonprofit wing of our store. That nonprofit allows us to give away free banned books, free books for kids at local schools. Different events like this are also produced by our foundation. So a lot of what we do is thanks to you all and the donations that we are able to get for that. So you'll notice on each of your chairs, we have a little flyer for the winter campaign that we're doing. There's a QR code if you are able and interested in making a donation. We can also help you with that at the desk. So thank you so much for that as well. And now for tonight's event. Mary Troy is the author of 5 previous books, 3 collections of short stories and 2 novels, Swimming on Highway North, Beauty's Cookie Lily, The Alibi Cafe and Other Stories, and Joe Baker is Dead. She has won the USA Book Award for Literary Fiction and the Devil's Kitchen Reading Award, a Nelson Algren Award, a William Rockwell Nelson Award, and more. She lives in St. Louis. And her new short story collection, like I said, slices the beating heart of the Midwest to reveal a world in which characters work to understand the paradox of modern community. The yearning to be seen and known and respected, while at the same time wishing, often desperately, to hide themselves away from people they are supposed to love. A newly successful businesswoman chooses a relationship with a terminally ill high school English teacher. A recent widow sent by her priest to visit her elderly mother, who he is afraid is suffering from depression. And a woman whose dreams are haunted by the ghosts of all those people she's disappointed decides to take in an indignant young woman in an attempt to change her life. In stories that sing with both compassion and an often tongue-in-cheek rough humor, In the Sky Lord provides a language that we can all use to ask the difficult question, what is a life lived well? And Mary will be in conversation tonight with John Dalton. John is the author of the novel Heaven Lake, winner of the Barnes & Noble 2004 Discovery Award in Fiction, as well as the Sue Kaufman Prize from the American Academy of Arts and Letters. The second novel, The Inverted Forest, was published in 2011 and was selected as the best book of the year by the St. Louis Post-Dispatch and the Wall Street Journal Book Lover. John is a graduate of the Iowa Writers Workshop and has held fellowships at the Fine Arts Work Center in Provincetown and the McDowell Colony. And as I said, he is the director of UMSL's MFA Program. Please join me in giving a really warm welcome to both Mary and John.
All right, thank you very much. And I'm really happy to be here tonight to talk with Mary. We taught together for, I don't know how many years, probably 15 years. And they were really good years. She was an excellent mentor to me. And so, and an excellent fellow writer to have with me at UMSL. So, and I got to read this book about 6 months ago. So I've been thinking about it and I've come up hopefully with some good questions. Let's start with the first one. Mary, with each book a writer publishes, she has to find a pithy and intriguing way to describe it to potential readers. Often this is hard to do, especially with a short story collection. Have you come up with a pithy, intriguing way to pitch In the Sky Lord?
Is this on?
Yep.
Okay, well, so my publisher came up with the thing that my stories slice open the beating heart of the Midwest, which I think I'm not real crazy about, but and everybody seems to keep wanting to pick it up, and it makes it sound like it's a lot more violent than anything in here is. But I don't really know. What I think is that this book, there are 10 women protagonists, and I see them all as very strong and brave and sort of bold in their choices, and I think they sort of epitomize what I think the Midwest is all about. It's sort of bravery.
All right, good. That's a great answer. So In the Sky, Lord, is set in Wolf Pass, Illinois. That's an invented place, though maybe that'll bring to mind Wolf Creek, Illinois for some people. I don't know. You've set books in South City, St. Louis, and in small town Missouri and Hawaii. What is it about small town Illinois that made it seem right for the setting of this collection?
Wolf Pass, Illinois is in fact my version of Grafton, because it's where the confluences come together and what the rivers all join there. It's just so beautiful. And it's, I think beauty is usually sort of complicated, and so therefore it's a good setting for complicated lives. But also there's something so, I don't know, sort of disappointing about Grafton too. Like people come there from all over. We knew a woman who came from Ireland, and she wanted to see Grafton and the confluence of the rivers because she had heard about these huge rivers, and it is beautiful. The bluffs and the pelicans above and everything, and yet once you're there, there's nothing to do. I mean, you can't go in the water because it's terribly polluted. You can't even eat the fish from the water. You can take a zip line up to the top and see it, or you can stay on the bottom and look at it and walk up and down. So people just go from winery to ice cream store to winery to a beer place to a winery, and they just walk around and they always look sort of bored, and so it's that weird combination of a place that you wouldn't. I think when you get there, you say, why did we come here? But you came here because it was beautiful. So, anyway.
Okay, no. There's a minor character in the Sky Lord named Stella Luck who gets mentioned in each of the stories in the collection. And this reminds me, of course, of Joe Baker, who had a similarly recurring role in your first collection of stories, Joe Baker is Dead. Obviously, there is a satisfaction to having the reader spot Stella in each of these stories. But beyond that, do Stella Luck and Joe Baker mean specific things to you and into the collections that they appear in?
Well, Stella, in fact, she moves the action in the first story and in the last story. And so she's a little more present than Joe Baker, although in some stories she's just called the doll maker, and her doll, Tressie Tessie, is mentioned. I think she represents this sort of brief success that Stella and maybe some people just like to hold on to, even when it's gone. I mean, now in the present time, she spends her days talking about, how to be successful kind of to other people. And she can't admit to herself that she isn't anymore. She created a doll that its hair grows, and then you can cut it off and it grows back. And she was famous briefly, kind of like that Cabbage Patch fad or any of these dolls that are, people kill each other in Walmart for them, and then 2 years later nobody wants them. And so she was kind of like that, but also like Joe Baker, she's a connection. She's kind of like like a piece of gum that's stuck on your shoe or something. She just keeps showing up.
All right, very good. This is your fourth short story collection, and I've often heard you remark about how you still love the form, even though it's a form that many publishers and readers don't get that excited about. What is it about the short story form that you still love?
I love short stories, and what I like are short stories that you can't say them any other way other than what they are. That they are, you really can't summarize them with any success. Kind of like I think of Steinbeck's The Chrysanthemums, for instance, or I think of many of Chekhov's short stories that are, I mean, you can sort of summarize the plot, but the plot's always sort of nothing. The plot is just an incident or just a way to reveal the character. And then if you were to summarize the character, you would be wrong because you'd have to read the story to do it. So I like that. I like that part of short stories. In my life, they've always been things that have impressed me or moved me more than novels. They're a little bit closer to poems in that they have to be read slow. And that's why they're not favorites with readers, because readers like to read fast and they like to get a novel and read, you can read 10 pages and you put it down and you get back to it and you only have time for 3. You really can't do that with a short story. But still, for me, they're hard to write too. They're really hard, and I think I kind of like the challenge.
Yeah, what I find hard about it is, I compare them to, like, let's say a good album where most albums, there's, 2 or 3 songs you gravitate toward. And so the same is true of many story collections. But the good ones are like wall-to-wall hits. And, that's really, really hard to assemble a group of stories that each one is delivering in a way.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. Okay. I like to ask writers a tricky and maybe bothersome question. And here it is. What do you know about writing now with the publication of your 6th book that you didn't know when you were at the beginning of your career writing your first story collection? And feel free to muse on life in general as well as writing.
Okay, well, all right. So, first of all, writing is much more fun now than it was when I published my first book, and I believe there are a number of reasons for that. One is that when I published my first book, I was much more ambitious, and I also wanted. It was connected to my job. I wanted to get tenure. I wanted to get promotion. I felt sort of a real need, a real push to write and to have a book good enough for publication. Now I don't, and the fun part is I know I can do it. So when I write, and when I write a first draft, and I don't know, some of you are writers, I used to think, oh my, this is so stupid. This is so silly. This is a childish story. This is too simplistic. This is way too obvious. This is so boring. This is illogical. Who are these stupid people? They don't act like people. They don't walk like people. What am I doing? And now I don't care. When I write something like that, I just keep working on it. I mean, and I'm certainly free to just throw it away and start something else. I don't feel like, I will never get this right, because I know I will if I live long enough. Not that it'll be easy, but I know I will. So I think that's sort of the fun part. I've also learned a few things. I used to say I wrote because people intrigued me, and then I changed that to say that they bewildered me. And now I just sort of think they fascinate me, even though I'm sort of in a state of total confusion about everybody lately, and so it's fun to play around with it. I've also learned that what I think is funny, a lot of people think is sad, and that sort of that was a surprise to me in the beginning. Some of my books, the agents would send them out, and people would say, well, they're too bleak. They're too bleak, and I thought, bleak, I think these are funny, but they're funny sad, and so I've learned not to care about that either.
This might be, we think of this as a companion question here. It's fair to say there are a number of UMSL people here in the audience tonight. you put in 20 plus years teaching at the university, and now you've had 5 years of retirement now to look back on it. What do you make of those years and the teaching you did and the students you mentored? How does it look from where you're sitting now?
I think, I'm very happy. I'm very happy I did it. I think it's one of the best things to do I think writing, okay, I think that real writing, especially literary, that's the genre they call it when you write about realism or real people. I think that is almost essential. People have to do it. People have to do it because what else can you do except explore who you are? And I think that's what literary writing does. And in the process, maybe hopefully entertain or inspire or motivate other people. I can't think of too much I could have done with my time that would have been better than working with students who I miss. I still miss many of my students. You get really close to your students in very short time, and so they stay with you, and you think about them a lot, and I think it's terrific. I'm a little bit sad when I look at like the UMSL MFA program seems to be shrinking, and they should hire at least 2 more people, maybe 3 or 4. They should put money into it. It's an important thing, but I know it's Missouri, and so that's the way it goes. But still, I think it's wonderful, don't you?
Mm-hmm. I do, and one of the things that occurs to me more and more is, of course, we're very proud of the students who go through our program, who go on to have books of their own and things like that. But it's becoming more and more aware to me that sometimes it's those undergraduates who are maybe, they're not going to go on and continue writing, but you and I may have played some kind of crucial, some minor role, but some kind of crucial role in forming their concept of themselves and their worthiness and things like that. So you never know, what our teaching has done to people over the years.
Yeah, I think that's right. I don't want to sound like, I'm a hippie or I'm so totally out of the mainstream that I'm hopeless, but life just can't be about, making money. And you can't just go to a university so you can get a job and make money because that's a silly way, you're going to die. And so who wants that to be the whole point of their life? I think if you working with undergraduates and just making them understand they can do something, they can create something, or they can think about something that nobody cares about. I mean, nobody cares what you write or wants you to write anything at all. It's that I think is uplifting, should be for everybody.
I think, since we've been talking about the book, we would like to maybe hear some pages of it. Is there a particular story that you would like to maybe focus on and introduce to us and read some pages?
Yeah, I think I will read a little bit of the story. It's kind of in the middle. It's called Butter Cakes. And the reason I want to read some of this is it kind of, the first few pages sort of set the whole story up and the tone. Butter Cakes is, I don't have to explain it because I'm going to start from the beginning. I was locked in on a driverless Greyhound bus in a Walmart parking lot in Yuma, Arizona, because Ignatius had given me breast enlargement surgery for my 42nd birthday, because Dad had won a fake gold medal from the lepers, and because Not Donna loved a lettuce picker. Saying it that way made me laugh out loud. I was alone on the bus except for Dad, who slept through my laughs. The sun rose fast from behind the Walmart that cloudless September morning, baking Dad and me so thoroughly in our bus-turned oven, we likely were not even red at the bone. And though I laughed And though pre-teen boys in white tees and low-slung jean shorts circled us on their bikes 4 times, banging on the back of the bus with each pass, and though our sweat-soaked shorts and tees, our thighs and arms stuck to the bus seats, Dad slept beside me, row 11, seat B, drooling and sputtering, a thick shock of pure white hair shading an eye. I worried that when reality smacked him hard and what he already knew was proven, we'd have to confront his confusion and yearning. I sent a wish out into the ether, an atheist version of a prayer for a gold medal, a real one, then laughed again, this time at myself. Get a grip, Gracie, I said. 3 weeks earlier, Ignatius's well-fed face glowed when he gave me my birthday gift a week before my birthday. He said he couldn't wait. Boobs, he said. Yours are fine, Grace, but they can be even better. A few days later, a plastic surgeon with a face like a wedge of white cheddar squeezed and poked and giggled and said C's would work best for my frame. Even so, Ignatius tried to sell D's, wanted her to say D's were possible, the more natural-looking teardrop-shaped ones, too. You're still good-looking, Grace, he said. Why go through the rest of your life not being totally hot? I didn't understand why I agreed to the consultation or why she giggled, but as I sat on her examining table, cold air creating goosebumps on my back, I felt like a back-of-the-room student who gets called on. I wanted to be anywhere else. I awoke on my actual birthday alone, the sun already high in the sky, Ignatius having left quietly hours before. I was spending my summer designing a series of courses specifically for health professionals, part technical and part science writing, and had given myself a rare few weeks off. I'm a professor of rhetoric who 5 years earlier became the youngest full professor ever in the Department of English at the University of Missouri. My research specialty, the language of public discourse and changes in policy based on word choice, such as calling a proposed tax on inherited estates a death tax, such as George W. Bush claimed that Jesus was his campaign manager, or referring to those displaced by Katrina as refugees rather than citizens or just people. I was hoping to work on an article about Make America Great Again, but the idea behind the imperative both bored and confused me. Maybe because the early July air in St. Louis was sweet and damp, or maybe because of the boobs, I wanted to stay in bed on my birthday and watch the play of sunlight as it was filtered through the leaves of an old oak before pouring through the skylight above. I knew I shouldn't stay there forever, though. Knew I had to fight against the heaviness that could keep me and so often had kept me down. Knew I'd have to get up and dress. I tried to list reasons. The only thing on it so far, the fat but misshapen big boy tomato from my neighbor's garden sitting on the kitchen table. Then Dad called and said, Gracie, my girl, want to go to Molokai, Hawaii? So I drove the 40 miles to Wolf Pass, Illinois, a small town hugging the Mississippi and Illinois River confluence, and later in Dad's kitchen, I dug into his favorite lunch of extra hot canned chili, washed down with a vodka tonic. Dad pushed the ceramic chicken and rooster salt and pepper shakers aside to place a letter beside my bowl. The paper was thick and cream-colored with the gold-embossed royal palm tree in the upper right, its trunk trailing down the right side. The Association for the Advancement and Recognition of Kindness was pleased to present Dad with its gold medal. He would be honored at the awards dinner in Kalapapa, the former leper colony on the island of Molokai. He smirked as I read it. Some joker, he said. I know lots of them. My brother cousins had already promised it, had already proved it was a hoax, Dad said, but he'd known from the first. Kirk went to the trouble of calling the not working number, looking the fake association up online. Doesn't exist. Still, I want to go, he said. The prankster has given me a good idea. Haven't you always wanted to go to the leper colony? Dad wasn't the father I was born with, but was my real mother's uncle, and the family member who took me in before I was 2 because other family members ganged up on him. Lost the coin toss, he said, drew the short straw. He laughed when he said it that way. The reason I needed replacement parents was a typical story about addicts turned into the kind of bums who make teary promises they can't keep. Dad said my real mother, even as young as 14, 3 years before she conceived me, was stealing radios and tape players from parked cars, selling them for drug money. She once broke into an unmarked police car and when arrested said she hadn't wanted to steal the radio, but had heard a song as she walked by and was trying to turn the radio off to save the car battery. She's now living out west, selling insurance, was what Dad and the rest of the family said of her. What I learned early on was our family's version of saying the dog had been sent to a farm in the country. We all thought she was likely dead. 2 years after Ralph and his wife Carol made me theirs, they had twins, my brother cousins, Kirk and Ken. 5 years after that, Carol raced a Burlington Northern to a crossing and lost. People whispered at the time, wondering if Carol were unhappy and could it have been suicide, but Dad made us remember her explosive laugh, so loud she'd been asked to tone it down in more than one restaurant. And yes, it was stupid, but she'd often raced trains. Dad told us not to waste time being sad, but to think instead of the joy she felt all those times she won, which was every time, he explained, until she didn't. Ignatius shook his head and then scratched it when I told him no thanks on the new breast. I felt my face relax as I watched his sincere confusion, though his saying I was good looking had pleased me, pushing against what I saw every day, all brown cowlicks on top of a body like a stalk of celery. He said he knew I worried about my looks because he'd seen me staring into the mirror and frowning. He said again my breasts were great, but wasn't bigger always better? He cupped his hands in front of his chest as he asked. He shook his head, then scratched it again. It was a habit I found oddly cute, miming his statements. His gestures now meant to demonstrate confusion. You could have bigger boobs for the rest of your life. Can you understand that just a dozen roses, trite though that is, would have been better? I had no other words to explain why we were coming to an end. He shook and scratched his head a third time. I'm going to Molokai anyway, I said. That'll give you a couple of weeks to find a new place. This time his confusion was profound enough, no gestures were needed. In fact, I'd surprised myself with that too, though I'd known from the first Ignatius was temporary. I first spoke to Ignatius, Assistant Director of Engagement, when he gave a talk on integrity in college admissions just over a year ago, and while chatting me up at the wine and cheese reception after, told me I had integrity coming out of my pores. He ran a hand down an arm when he said it to show integrity flowing like water from his upper arm to his fingers. The action confused me, as I was supposed to be the one with integrity flowing. More than that, I'd not said anything that would scream out or even whisper integrity to him. I'd attended his 100% unmemorable lecture and PowerPoint to please our department chair. Still, I liked his apple pie-shaped face. Dad said, as he was the one being fake recognized, he'd pay for the whole trip to Molokai and 2 weeks in the islands after the ceremony. He wouldn't let me or my brother cousins chip in. For the family meeting about how we'd get to Molokai and back and pay for hotels and meals on Dad's budget, we four sat around the kitchen table, and Ken and Kirk laughed more at the fancy-sounding association, the expensive but fake letterhead, the phone number that wasn't real. I laughed too, said Ignatius's yearning for D's was sending me to the lepers. Dad said he thought the joker who sent the letter was this old guy he used to work with, former shop steward for Put a Lid on It Hat Factory, one of the companies he'd closed down. But I am kind, aren't I, Dad asked us, and I'm known for my cakes. When Dad said he'd drive us to Los Angeles and we could fly from there and it'd be cheaper than flying from St. Louis, we three groaned. Dad was a natural passenger, drove with his head turned sideways or nearly backward, and as children we'd either cowered in fear of the impending crash or hidden from those who passed with their middle fingers raised. I said I could drive, but to my surprise the other three said the same of me. Reminded me I used to say I drove fast to get where I was going before my car broke down. Besides, Kirk said, if you do your sinking into gloom thing, you'll both be stranded, maybe for days, unless, heaven forbid, Dad drives. Gracie doesn't sink, Dad said, and just so you know, I can drive. We all agreed to a bus from St. Louis, 49 hours to LA, then a flight to Maui, and another to the island of Molokai. We could sleep on the bus and take our own food. Then after the ceremony, we'd go back to Maui, maybe tack on another island. Ken laughed and pointed at Dad. This old guy, he said, acts like the award exists. Dad laughed. This old guy, he pointed at himself. Really? 3 days later, Kirk dropped us at the St. Louis bus terminal for our 11 p.m. departure. Said he could hardly wait to see the gold medal to bite into the chocolate.
I think we can turn it over to a few questions from the audience, and maybe while you're thinking of your question, I'll ask my last one, which is, Mary, the eccentric voice and the eccentric affection you have for your characters that informs your work and has informed all of your work. I mean, maybe one of the well springs for that is, of course, Flannery O'Connor. Do you still see her as that sort of one of the main reasons you write? So I guess I want to talk about those foundational writers for you. Maybe if it's not Flannery O'Connor, let us know who it is. And then because you're now retired and you get to read a lot, what's a great book you read, a recent book that you can recommend to everybody?
Okay, well, Flannery O'Connor was not really a foundational writer. I discovered her. I read her before I started writing because I started writing kind of late in my life. But Catherine Mansfield was one of my first, and Chekhov in high school, and also strangely enough, William Faulkner, like the short story Barn Burning, and J.D. Salinger's short stories. In The Raise High, The Roof Beam, Carpenters, those stories affected me. Now, I love Flannery O'Connor, and when I discovered her, I thought, she writes like I'd like to write. But I was already, in my late 20s by then, or 30s, so I'm not sure she was really foundational. So there's an interesting writer, and I mentioned her in my acknowledgments in the back of the book. Her name is Carrie Neville, and she has written 2 collections of short stories. But when I read her collection called Don't Forget to Remember Me, and it was published by Braddock, and that's why I sent my work to Braddock Avenue Books, because I like what they did with hers. Well, then I looked her up and found out that her previous book had been published by Bookmark, which was also a press that published me first. So I was thinking, so no wonder I like her, because we are liked by the same editors. But she's really, really good. Right now I'm reading. Right now I'm reading an old book by Tayari Jones, but before that, one of the best books I've read in a long time is Sally Rooney's Intermezzo, and I really would recommend that. And other people, I love Elizabeth Strout's writing. I love her short stories, but I like her novels. I like the Burgess Boys, and I see that her new novel picks up the Burgess family again, and so I'm interested in that. Andre Dubus III had a great book out a year ago called Such Kindness. That's really an outstanding book as well. But I really do like short stories and read quite a few of them.
All right. Was there anybody in the audience who would have a question for Mary?
I'll admit to not being familiar with your work. I read a piece in the Post-Dispatch Sunday, which grabbed my attention. I've always gravitated to the kind of storytelling that I'm hearing and read about, and really the world building. And so to create this community was always something that just struck me as certainly it must not be easy, and to keep it straight. And maybe you could talk a little bit about how you built the town.
Well, so I didn't actually build it. I more stole it.
Even better.
Because it really is very much what Grafton, Illinois is. It's a town on sort of squeezed in between the bluffs and the water. Just one sort of main road full of, as I said, wineries and bars. Sure. And fudge shops and fish and restaurants. The fish always, of course, it doesn't come from there, but and all the little hollows. So there are a lot of little people who live back, like in these sort of 1 or 2 block streets that run off of the main highway, and they're called hollows. And some of them, they're not named anymore. They have real names, but there's one, the sign's still there, it calls it something hollow, but they used to be like, one was called Baby Hollow because 2 families who lived back there once had just a lot of babies, and Slippery Hollow, and they're called various things. And I didn't want to use Grafton because I didn't want to have to be true to that. I wanted to make up my own name for some of the hollows, maybe add one. I wanted to make it, add a joint that maybe isn't really there, and I didn't want people to say, oh no, that's not across from the fish shack, that's up there or something. And also I wanted to people it with people I know, with people I've created. And I'm working on a novel now that takes place there, and I use some of the characters from the book, but also some newer characters, because it is kind of fun though, and it's kind of fun to steal a town like that. And I hope Grafton doesn't mind that I've stolen it. But
I doubt it. Yeah.
I doubt it.
Thank you.
Also, you mentioned eccentric. Now this is kind of funny, but people oftentimes say my characters are eccentric, and I never. Well, now I'm sort of used to it, but in the beginning, I never thought they were eccentric. They seem, and maybe I just know people like that. I have my niece is here, and she's not eccentric at all. No, she's a little eccentric, but I have a sister-in-law who, many, many years ago, we lived near each other when she lived in Hawaii when I did. And I first took my first writing class there. And I, for some reason, a woman in my writing class ended up going out for drinks with me and my sister-in-law once. And after the drinks were over the next day, that woman said to me, you know, I always thought you work so hard to make up these eccentric characters, but after spending an evening with your sister-in-law, she said, these are just your normal people. And they are really just my normal people. Don't tell Mary Fran I said
I won't mention anything.
Hi, Minsu.
Very interested. The character that you read from is an academic.
Yeah.
Considering your experience as at UMSL and teaching all day, will you ever attempt to write a university novel?
Yes,
This genre?
I have been tempted to, and I may someday still. This is the only character I've ever written who actually works in a university, but I mean, they're very funny, odd places. And I remember once years ago, you and I talked about collaborating on one. But yeah, they are, I mean, there are some great ones. I keep thinking of Straight Man, that Richard Russo novel. The one, but,
Do you know Elaine Showalter's short book, which is on the genre of the university novels? And
what is it?
it's called Faculty Towers. And she
Okay.
spells out all the stereotypes and tropes and all of that have appeared in classic university novels.
Yeah, and the James Smiley Moo, what was so funny about that was the person on the whole campus who had all the power was the provost secretary. And, I can understand that. That makes perfect sense. Okay.
I've often heard like the colloquialism that characters you write often carry a piece of you, no matter how small. Is that a sentiment that you relate to? Can you see yourself in the struggles and desires of your protagonists?
Yes, I can. I used to tell myself that I wasn't writing about myself, I was writing fiction. But, we finally have to admit that you reveal yourself. And so the actual, the actions haven't really happened to you. You haven't really done these exact things, but the whole, your perspective on the world, your perspective on life and people and how you would react or not react to certain things becomes clear in your work. So you can't really hide even when it is fiction. Also, I'm just really crazy about most of my characters. That's why I keep reusing them. I can't like just let them go.
How do you plan your writing? Do you have hours that you dedicate daily? How do you make that work? Obviously the time and energy and work that must go into, writing and producing these books.
Before I retired, I had to schedule it pretty carefully. And I had to say, I'm not seeing any students these few hours. I'm not, these mornings when I don't have classes or whatever would be for writing. Now that I'm retired, I just sort of write all the time. And I really do. And we go out, we get together with friends. My husband and I go hiking, we go to parties, and yet I'm always still like, in my head, I'm still writing, and I'm writing all the time. And, maybe it's a sign of senility, I don't know what it is, or dementia of some sort, but I just enjoy it so much more now, and I just want to write all the time. You'll get that way as soon as you retire.
Well, I found that my writing hours have changed. I'm 2 hours every morning. I'm good for about 2 hours early in the morning too. When I was younger, I used to stay up all night and things like that. But yeah, I would love to be able to work 8 hours a day like I used to. Can you work a 6 or 8 hour day still in front of the computer?
No, not really, or not unbroken, but yeah. But still, it's all It's all still writing, but yeah, 6 or 8 hours a day, that's a long time. I mean, nobody wants to do that. That's almost like a job.
Any last questions tonight? All right, let's give one more round of applause to Mary.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for joining us. We have In the Sky Lord as well as Mary's previous books at the desk. We also have The Inverted Forest. So if you don't have your books yet, grab some. And we are going to be doing a signing just in the next room in that corner. So we'll move over there in a sec. And thank you all so much for joining us tonight. Appreciate it.